everybody. Jess Conrad here, licensed professional clinical counselor, and the beautiful Laura. Introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Laura Wentworth, and I'm an early childhood education professor and nonprofit president for Lot 25.
And I have shattered into one. So, introduction. We're going to start introducing some things. Right now, we just started the I Am Who I Am group. Um, so, I got the tattoo, I Am Who I Am, after I gave my life to the Lord. And was affirmed that I'm exactly who God created me to be. I just had character flaws that I had to work through, which were cognitive distortions, which is perfect timing because this week we're talking how to enlarge your soul through grief and loss. And a lot of the cognitive distortions come up, I think, when we're going through very difficult times and we're not thinking straight or we're emotional about something. And there's the squirrel that my dogs have been going crazy over. No, I'm the squirrel. There it is. No wonder they're acting nuts. Haha.
Buzzword
Yeah.
today. Oh, that's funny. But tis as you.
That so comedian is something I could be maybe at another time in life, but
Sure.
we're going to talk about how we enlarge our soul through our grief and loss, and surrender to our limits. For me, I think it was just like a tilting point in my life when I realized my limits didn't make me inadequate. They showed me where I needed to reach out and connect with others to get help and support.
Mhm.
We're not meant to be good at everything. We're not meant to be perfect in every situation or role that we play or vocation that we have. It's you have distinctly unique gifts and traits.
Mhm.
And your personality is different from other people's personalities, and your temperament is different. So it's learning how to embrace our differences, but also still staying unique to who we are and who God created and designed us to be. So, uh,
Tremendous.
I don't know, Laura, how old were you when you think I don't know if we ever really truly have our full identity, boom, like, but when did you find your identity in Christ? How old were you?
I found my identity in Christ. I would say college, truly, because I think it took me going out of the country, coming back, realizing I wanted in some fashion to work with children, and then also tying that into, well, you know what I know a lot about is growing up as a child living in poverty and what it's like to be a kid that really wants love. And so I started working with those populations, and that's when I started to realize that's what God was calling me to do. So because I got my job at Head Start, and all of those children, they all came in with their own struggles. There were things that I went to a middle class high school and had your standard 4-year college education. Here's what a standard classroom looks like. Here's what you need to know. And then that first job completely blew my mind. It was nothing like what I was trained to do. And I had children who were coming in and they had parents who were in jail. They had parents who had committed suicide. They had parents who were hooked on drugs. Like just nothing prepared me for that. But what I found in myself was that that little girl that was inside of me that experienced so much of that was able to level with and comfort that child. And
Mhm.
so I looked forward to going to work every day because I had two different groups, 17 preschoolers in the morning, 17 in the afternoon. And at the end of the year, it was heartbreaking for me to have to say goodbye because we were all so attached. But a lot of people would say I could never do preschool full time. I could never do Head Start because it's a hard thing to see every day. And for me, it was like, this is what I grew up knowing. But then pair that with Belize and getting to go back there after all that time and just realizing this is where I'm supposed to be.
Mhm.
But I would say, yeah, that sophomore year of college, that first trip to Belize and then getting that job there, just
Rolling off of that, I'm glad you mentioned that because one of the things that I learned through my journey of purification, I guess, like learning, just relearning like what the psychosocial stages of development are, but looking to God as your father figure versus your parents as the one who's your provider and the unconditional love and support and all of that.
Mm,
Um, so when we grow up in homes and broken homes, chaotic homes, stress, all of that, we tend to lose our childhood is basically taken from us, right? Like something is taking away the joy and fulfillment of like what it means to just be a kid and to not have to worry about where your next meal is coming from because you know you have parents who are going to provide that for you. Like, so when you're a kid and you're going through trauma, that sense of like safety and security is severely damaged. And
mhm,
so you spend the rest of your life in this fight or flight response of survival. Like this is all just about survival at this point. And if you're an adult who never grew up around that or learned anything about that, it's really hard to manage the emotional roller coaster of children that are in survival mode because you personalize it, you look at yourself and or you look at the kids and you're just like these kids are so bad and all of these things and it's we pass these judgments on when at the end of the day it's like no, they're broken and confused and hurt and you're
mhm,
just making your lack of empathy and trying to fix it instead of just being there and loving them is what supports and heals that. And what God showed me, similarly, it sounds like He showed you, is when I was like, okay, God, what's my purpose? What are you going to have me do? And I knew from the get go, leadership was something that was embedded in me. And so I was like, cool, let me do all these leadership stuff. And he's like, you're going to go volunteer with children. And I was like, no, no, I'm not. I don't like kids. I'm uncomfortable around kids. I didn't even get my own childhood. So why would I want to be the person who's spending time with all these other kids? And it was through the process of working with these kindergartners and first graders. And I did, I was a substitute teacher. I volunteered with the children's department at churches. I did nonprofit work with kids. And every time I knew God was leading me to do like step into a leadership role, I would look for all of these like things that I thought I wanted to do. And it was always, no, we don't need that. But we do need somebody who will step up and be a leader in our children's ministry or work with our children here. And I'm like, all right, God, fine. I will go work with these kids. And it is through the work with children that the Lord restores your childhood.
mhm, amen.
So
Mhm,
being able to learn how to be that innocent kid that can just laugh about silly things and make silly faces and not feel like you're going to get punished or hurt or in trouble for being goofy and silly because your parents didn't like it and you annoy them. And so, if you are somebody who struggles with trauma and you feel like you had to grow up way sooner and you were taking care of your mom or you were taking care of your dad and going, as they're going through their grief and loss and their pain and their suffering, a lot of parents look to their children for comfort, which is damaging,
mhm,
understandable, but damaging to a child whose brain is not developed to understand what's going on. And then we create these narratives and stories to help us survive those situations. And it's debilitating. And so that's really what we're going to talk about in this chapter, surrendering to your limits. But I think when God is calling you into to do something bigger,
mhm,
you have to go back to your childhood and you have to learn to surrender to the inner child because your inner child is now healed because you get to be the adult that you didn't have when you were a kid. And as you show up as that adult for others, you begin to show up as that person for yourself, your own inner child. And
mhm,
that's where a lot of the healing comes from.
mm. Yeah,
Um,
it's very freeing.
Yeah. So
And
if you don't have children that you can volunteer with, go work with the Society. Like go work with animals that need help. Go take care of something and comfort something. Hold the babies in the NICU unit. Go to China and play with the pandas. That's like on my bucket list.
oh my gosh, please put that to our our itinerary.
We're gonna go volunteer at the panda zoo and just play with pandas for a whole week.
Let's do it. I did the NICU thing for right before the pandemic hit. I had put in a request maybe a year prior. I said, if you ever do something like this, I want to be part of it. And so I got an email, and the lady just said, yeah, we can set you up on a schedule and you can come in. Just let us know, from when to when you're going to be here. And even though I only got to hold a couple babies, that was really, I think it was healing for me too. But these are children who they were going to next of kin, and they're in like the second level of the nursery unit. So when babies are born, if they're healthy and nothing's wrong, they go in that pretty window where everybody can look at them. But then there's like another room to the back where with all the incubators and things, and that's where one little guy was there 3 weeks, I think, and the only interaction he was having up to that point with any adult was the nurses. So because he had several siblings he hadn't met yet, but he was taken from his mother. So I just got to go in there a couple times a week, and I would hold him. He was usually awake when I was in there, but then I would rock him and he would fall asleep and I would pray over him. And I
Yeah.
would tell him, I would say, you're going to do good things. Like you're going to get out of here and you're going to grow up and you're going to be a good
You're speaking
human.
life, you're speaking life into him.
Right. And that's why I wanted that job. I wasn't even a job, it was volunteering. But and again, like they had to shut it down and I understood why, but I just am glad that I got to do that for a little bit of time.
Do you know why holding babies is so detrimental?
Detrimental.
Like why it's so important and crucial for children, for babies, infants to be held? There was a study done in Russia at an orphanage where all these kids were coming in. And so they didn't know what to do with them, but the nuns were coming in. And there was one specific nun who would go in every day and hold every single one of the children in there.
Mm,
And out of the hundreds of children that were in that orphanage, she was the only nun who didn't lose her children. None of
mm.
them died. The rest of them passed away.
Okay, yeah.
It's
Yep.
because touch is literally the only sense we cannot live without.
Yep.
Have to be in touch. And what is the first thing the enemy takes from you when you're abused as a child?
Mm-hmm.
Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Hugs are uncomfortable. The slightest little bit of touch makes your skin crawl your
Yeah.
whole life growing up. And you never want to be close to anybody, and it's isolating, and you pull away. And as soon as you get just a little bit of touch, it's smothering, and you're just like, oh, get away from.
Yeah.
That is why the first 18 months of a child's life, it is so important that you cater to their every need. And
Yep.
if
Yep.
you were somebody who grew up without that, or it was sometimes it was met and sometimes it wasn't, and you have like, and this is where BPD is developed, like you get this disorganized, sometimes my cries, I'm comforted, and other times I'm not, and I don't know. And then sometimes I'm abused for crying out, and I don't know if I'm allowed to cry or if I need to hold this in. And it creates such a confusing and damaging way of connecting with people, which is why I think borderline, one, it's on the rise because we have so many young parents and divided families and fathers who aren't around and mothers that are working and trying to raise their kids. And so, um, keeping that in mind when you have children, if you have family members who have kids, go hold those babies, go be there and connect. And I know it's so interesting because and I think I've talked about this before, but like my sister has 5 kids,
Mhm.
and I was in and out of the first two, her two girls. Um,
Okay.
I would visit, but I was living away. Well, when she had her third Ram, like I was living at home. So I was at her house all the time. The first 2 years of that kid's life, I was holding him, I was carrying him around. So as we're getting older, as they're getting older, you just have a bond with kids that you hold and touch, and he connects with me. Like their first three, I got married and moved away, and so for the next two I was kind of in and out. And JB, the youngest, it took him a little while to warm up to me because I only saw him a couple times a year when the first couple years of his life. So it just like I'm like, oh my gosh, this really is powerful. Like
Yeah.
somebody, those children, they might not remember you or have memories of that, but there is like this instinctual energy connection bond between you. So hold those babies,
Mm.
touch, learn how to work past your discomfort of touch by touching animals and opening yourself up to innocent touch. And that's what I really think it was. These little kids always coming and hugging me and touching me. And I'm like, what? Uh,
Don't
okay.
mess with it, right? Yeah.
After a while, it's like embrace it. And that healed so much of my fear of touch and that I don't want to be around anybody. Don't touch me. Don't, I pull away before anybody even gets close to me, like naturally. So you got to heal those things. Grief and loss. That
Mhm.
is I think the most significant loss you can ever face is the loss of a parent or a caregiver in your early childhood and the development of that. So one of the things that he says in this book in the very beginning that's stood out to me very profoundly is loss marks the place where self-knowledge and powerful transformation happen if we have the courage to participate fully in the process.
Yeah.
Brene Brown says courage comes from where? Do you remember?
Within?
Vulnerability.
Okay.
So you cannot be courageous without being vulnerable.
That's true.
It's through vulnerability that develops courage because it takes risk.
Yeah. That's why it feels, that's why you have to summon the courage to do it because you're feeling very vulnerable. You're feeling very raw and open and
Mhm.
but
So
that's, you know,
our losses are what bring us together. And a lot of times we we were they're talking about in group or yeah, the group that the Western culture, our society, America, we suck at grief.
oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Terrible. As a culture, everybody is just, oh, well, there's always some sort of offer of advice, or we're trying to say something to make you feel better, to help you feel better, which it's just so minimizing of the pain that you're actually going through. Like, well, at least you have this, or, that's another, what did they say? At least heaven has another angel. And it's just like, did you like,
Yeah. Yeah. Like, are we skipping completely over?
but people are so afraid to feel sadness and anger and anguish and just the depression, the debilitating experience of loss. And we just try to, okay, let's just sweep it aside and we'll just march on through this and I'll just be strong. And, all that does is prevent you from healing. And you're
Mhm.
just delaying the inevitable, which is you're going to experience that feeling at some point in your life. It will come out. And it's usually not coming out in a good way. It's coming out in anger and lashing out and cutting and self-medicating. And those are the things that we're going to talk about today. So our limits are behind all of our loss. If you had to think about all of your losses, what do you think what did that help you discover about yourself, your losses?
I think first of all, it taught me at the end of the day that I should always be relying on Jesus for everything. That what it always comes back to is that I could lose anything or anyone at any point.
Yeah.
And that that's where you find that difference of where does your faith lie? Who is your confidence in? And I think that's why it's so crushing for a lot of people who don't have faith in Christ, is because they feel hopeless when it comes crashing to the ground. Everything that they had built their confidence in is just gone.
Hmm.
And but for me also, there's been some really big aha moments through it. I've learned, yeah, it's been hard. It's been, physically painful, emotionally painful, but I've emerged on the other side as a stronger person. It's almost like you walk through that fire and you experience something and then you learn how not to do something or a better way to do something.
Yeah.
And you realize I don't have to go back to the way I was living where now that I know this, I know that I can keep going. And so I know I'm being vague in those circumstances, but there's been a lot of times in life too where I've just felt so defeated when something hasn't worked out or And I remember walking through my grandmother's illness when she had ovarian cancer, and she was sick for 6 years. And, but particularly the last 3 weeks of her life was horrible to witness because she was in the hospital, and every day she was getting a little bit worse and a little bit worse, and she was truly suffering because everything was shutting down. But
Just
through,
it was the same with my dad the last few weeks of his life and fighting cancer, and it's just the pain. Like you would just touch his arm to like move it, and he's just like, "Ah," and
right.
just and you just feel so helpless in that
Yeah.
moment.
And that's why you need that circle of people who support that person, and they were supporting each other. But I also remember there were a couple moments when, like, my mom, she was there all the time, and so were my uncles and my aunt. And there was one night they all stayed with her, and she was just so ill all through the night that by the time the morning came and I showed up to see how things were, they the doctors came in to do another procedure on her. They were putting a tube down her throat, but and she was panicked and she was really having a hard time with it. And they were all just so tired that they no, I think the wind went out of them. Like they just nobody got up to hold her hand. And I was like, that's what I'm here for.
Mhm.
And she's 6 days from dying at this point, and she gripped my hand so hard, like, you could just she was fighting so hard to stay alive. But then in that was the same day too that I said, why don't you guys go get a drink or something, go to the cafeteria. And they left, and I had a 20-minute talk with her, and she basically said goodbye to me. She said, I'm not going to be here much longer. And so that was all divinely situated. But it's things like that where I've asked myself, yeah, the suffering is awful, and I really wish I didn't have to go through this, but where can I find value in it? What can I look around? What's my opportunity here? And there's always something that I can learn from the situation. So,
Absolutely. And then we're going to talk about the story of Job and how sometimes there is no reason. Everybody's like, everything happens for a reason. No, sometimes there's casualties, but sometimes it's just life.
hmm
Just
hmm
psychoanalyze it and try to rationalize it and spiritualize it and go through all of those things. So, Job, they say, is like the Bill Gates of today, or maybe the Elon Musk. This might have been written before Elon Musk was who he is. But Job was like the richest man in like one of the richest men in the world, probably, from what they can consider. Like from what they say about him, he was very, very, very wealthy. He had 9 or 10 children. He was married. He had his own business, lands, all of that. And the story is that Satan went to God and said that something about, I can turn the reason why he doesn't, turn away from you is because he has all of this money and all of these things. And that's why he loves you, because you provide for him and give him all of this wealth. And God was like, no, that's not. So you can take all of the wealth you want from him. He won't turn his back on me. And so then, he loses everything he ever had. All of his children die in tragic accidents. And then it's, the devil goes back to God and is like, well, it's because he still has his health. That's why he still loves you. And God's like, no, it's not. And then he's struck with boils. And, so the enemy, God gives the enemy permission to do the things that he does so he can show his glory at the end of it.
hmm
And it's when we surrender our will to saying, whatever you are going to use me for in this world that brings glory to you, like I trust that my reward is on the other side. It's not here.
yeah.
And, to the point where even Job's wife was like, at what point are you just going to curse God and die? Like, and he wouldn't. He just refused to turn his back on the Lord. And through all of that, obviously, the hero comes, and that heroic moment of like, God restores his family, gives him new children, restores his wealth, and he gets back 100-fold everything that he lost. And the hardest part about that book, the story of Job, for me, was listening to his three best friends, all telling him all the reasons why he's causing this in his own life. You're not faithful enough. You don't have enough faith. Well, these are generational curses, and you got to fix this, and you got to change that. And these are all the reasons why this is happening to you. And sometimes that's true, but it's not always that way. And that is not empathy. Like that is shaming. This is how we shame each other and we don't even realize it. Like we think we're being helpful. Like I'm giving you advice. I'm telling you how you can resolve this or like what the answer is. But at the end of the day, you don't know what the freaking answer is.
Right.
And now you're trying to play God for this person, unless God gives you this divine wisdom that came out of nowhere, you knowing nothing about the situation. And he's like, this is a message for you. Just stop trying to tell people how to live their lives. Empathize with them, feel the emotion, go to those dark places,
Yeah.
ask them what they're feeling, what they're going through, what they're thinking. Just shut
Yeah.
your mouth and stop trying to tell everybody what to do and how to do it because you think you know how to make their life better. You don't.
Yeah. Or how to feel it.
Yeah. So,
Can I share a Job moment? This was all making me think of it. So I had this crazy year, more like a fall semester, but 2016, I went out there with the best of intentions, day one of the semester. It went beautifully. I taught all my classes. I came home. It's 5 p.m. and it's August, so it's still warm. I'm like, I'm gonna go for a run. I did go for a run, and I stepped off the road a little bit too wobbly as I do, and I went down and I broke my ankle day one. So, and this was the start of just like a cascade of things. A couple weeks later, a student approached me and handed in her homework and said, I have mono and I can't be in class. Guess what I ended up with a few weeks later? Mono. So now I have a broken ankle and mono. But, and I took a couple weeks off to kind of get over that. I went back to work and I was coming home late one night from class and a tree fell in front of my car. And this is all with just like within a month of each other. And and then there was a I don't even remember what the issue was, but there was a severe conflict with somebody in a different office. And she basically the way she chose to handle it was go around me and kind of talk to everybody but me. And so I had to sit down and it was a pretty uncomfortable conversation with her and plus my own boss. But I just remember going through that and all of those things, just being so exhausted, but getting to the end of it and God just being like, are you feeling pretty humble right now? I'm like, yes. And me just learning to rely on him through every single thing. Because in the beginning, I was reacting to why me, God, why I love to run and now my ankle's broken and now I'm really sick and now, the enemy is threatening my safety and now people at my job are mad at me and just one thing after the other. But then I got to a point where I was just like, okay, whatever may come, may come. And that's when it stopped. And I didn't know that that was going to be how it ended up, but it's kind of like the storm blows over and things calm down. And I looked back and I was like, honestly, that was kind of like a comic strip. So because everything that could have gone wrong did. Um, but I survived it. And I think that was just because I spent so much time in prayer over it, just saying, please just don't let me get a big head about this or don't let me turn into a hateful person, and
yeah.
that's something that I remember other people saying, yeah, you had a really terrible year. I'm like, it was hard. I'm not gonna lie, it was hard, but
Inspiration.
it's in the past.
And it's through those moments where you come out stronger on the other side. You learn through that. You develop skills you didn't have before. It's communication. Oh, I learned that it's okay to talk to people and have difficult conversations. And maybe sometimes I mess it up the way I say it, but at least I said it. And now I'll get better at it the next time I have to do this. Again, avoidance is a negative reinforcer. So the more you avoid something for whatever reason, you're just reinforcing that it's going to feel that way, but be stronger the next time you're faced with something similar. So you might as well just face your fears and get over it, push through it. So he says, dropping our defensive shields. So in John 11:35 and Luke 19:41, It says Jesus himself wept both at the grave of Lazarus and for his people in Jerusalem. Ecclesiastes teaches us there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. So it's not just the positive and the happy and all of those feel good moments. It's we learn through our dark moments, through the sadness and the grief and the loss. Um, Turning toward our pain, he says, is counterintuitive, but in fact, the heart of Christianity is that the way to life is through death, the pathway to resurrection is through crucifixion. So, the quickest way to reach the sun and the light of day is not to run west chasing after it, but to head east into the darkness until you finally reach the sunrise. So, I want to read this part about the children on page one at the bottom of page 123. So he says, when we are children, creating a defensive wall to shield us from pain can serve as one of God's great gifts to us. If someone suffers emotional or sexual abuse as a young child, for example, denial of the assault on his or her exposed humanity serves as a healthy survival mechanism. Blocking out the pain enables him or her to endure such painful circumstances. It is healthy to not fully experience painful realities when we are that young so that we survive emotionally. The transition into adulthood, however, requires that we mature through our defense mechanisms of denial in favor of honestly looking at what is true, at reality. Jesus himself said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Unconsciously, however, we carry many defensive maneuvers into adulthood to protect ourselves from pain. And in adulthood, they block us from growing up spiritually and emotionally. So here are some common defense mechanisms. Number one, denial or selective forgetting. We refuse to acknowledge some painful aspect of reality externally or internally. For example, I feel just fine. It didn't bother me a bit that my boss belittled me and that I got fired. I'm not worried in the least. So, in these situations, when something hurtful, unjust, unkind happens to you, do we just go, not a big deal? Or do we be honest and say, I'm really freaking hurt and upset about this, and I don't think it's right. I'm going to get through it. I'll get past this, but I'm not going to deny the pain and the emotion that comes up because of what happened to me, because of somebody else's actions or whatever. So it's not the denial part is not denying it's I don't think it's so much associated with denying what happened as much as it's denying the emotion that's attached to what happened. Because that's like what forgiveness is to you have to acknowledge the emotion that the action caused and then forgive to let go, acknowledge what you're feeling to let it go, and then choose to forgive and move on from that. So
Mhm.
denial. That never happened to me. How many times have you been? I hear from so many clients where they're like, I don't remember anything. And then something comes up and I'm like talking about it. And somebody's like, that never happened. And it's like, yeah, it did. But we have these defense mechanisms as children. And so we have selective memories. And I don't remember that ever happening. And it's like, well, it did, because I certainly remember it like it happened yesterday and it was 30 years ago. So being able to acknowledge that I don't remember that that happened, but tell me more. Like, I didn't realize this was so painful for you and that
I
you're
think
still.
I could be a big denier because, like you were reading a minute ago, where in order to survive your situation, you working with emotions, but I actually stuffed my emotions in. But I would also say that whatever happened to me or whatever I did to somebody else wasn't that bad because I
That's
did not.
that's minimizing.
Okay. But I remember also just being terrified of being in trouble for it. I was
Mhm.
terrified of the punishment that would follow if I was discovered. And it didn't have to be a huge thing. It could just be that I snapped at somebody out of, just being so frustrated out of the situation. But now that I've messed up, now I'm going to take the heat for that. And at one point, I realized there that if I were to just openly be hard on myself in front of my abuser, that they would leave me alone. And so I had a lot of different coping mechanisms, but denial was a big one, where I would just pretend like, this isn't it. That's not the way it happened, and or it never actually happened, and I'm not at fault.
So minimizing is the next one that you're kind of talking about. This is when we admit something is wrong, but in such a way that it appears less serious than it actually is. My son is doing okay with God. He's just drinking once in a while, when in reality, he's drinking heavily and really sleeping at home.
Mhm,
So I see minimizing all the time, all day long, every day that I talk to clients, minimizing, minimizing, minimizing. And the way that I know, the way that you can know you're minimizing is the moment you become sarcastic about something. Oh, I
mhm,
was just joking. You're minimizing the offense. Like, take responsibility. To me, sarcasm is like, if you communicate sarcastically, you are severely emotionally immature, just so you're aware. And I know that's harsh to say, but sarcasm is the root of emotional immaturity. You don't know how to communicate assertively, and so you make passive aggressive comments and jokes about something instead of just being like, "Hey, that really hurt my feelings that you said that, and I'm not okay with that." And you set a boundary. So
mhm,
I think we are taught in our culture too that sarcasm is just like this great thing that we do. And,
mhm,
it's awesome. And kids hear parents saying sarcastic things to them all the time. So they grow up thinking like this is just how you communicate. Um, but it's detrimental to your emotional growth and development. So if you're still communicating sarcastic, especially on dating sites, oh, I'm sarcastic. If you can't handle it, keep it moving. And I'm like, swipe left. Like, there is no way I am ever going to date a man who uses sarcasm and gloats about it and is like, I'm just a sarcastic guy. Yeah, you're a man child then. Like, no
mhm,
offense, but offensively, you are a man child. That is like the biggest red flag for me when it comes
mhm.
to meeting a guy. Like, if you're just, no, mm-mm,
If you can't face the truth, then you're
can't.
not an adult.
Yeah. So minimizing, don't minimize, take responsibility. It is whether something is offensive to me, but if it's offensive to me, but it's not offensive to you, you have no right to tell me to not be offended. Now, I'm also an advocate of learning how to be unoffendable. Like,
Mhm,
offense is a choice. You're choosing to be offended, but those things are hurtful. So it's
yeah,
like, I'm not offended by what you said, but what you said caused feelings of hurt and pain in me. And it makes me question our relationship now. And I
mhm,
don't want to be in friendships or relationships for people where I'm questioning your morals and your judgment and your character in regards to my safety and security, right? It always comes down to the safety and security. So being able to admit, like, you know what, I didn't realize that was a big deal to you, and I apologize, and I'll work on, being more aware of that when I'm in your presence and not, behaving or acting or treating or whatever you in that way.
mhm. Yeah, it's really important. And I think I told you the story the other day, when he was in the back seat of my car, and she was just making lots of she was poking at my nephew and making lots of sarcastic jokes and things. And granted, she's not even quite 8 yet, but I said to her, I said, Winnie, how do you think it makes someone feel when you are making fun of them in that way? Like, I know you're trying to have a laugh, but what do you think it feels like to be on the receiving end of that? And she said, not good. And I said, so maybe we need to practice making people feel good about themselves, and saying kinder things. And you can still find ways to laugh with people and to enjoy your time with them without putting them in the center of the joke.
Well,
Um,
I mean, let's be real, like, without criticizing somebody and judging them
yeah,
harshly.
right, right, exactly.
Probably hears that all day between the adults in her life.
Yeah, and I also think it's a pattern in she's in second grade, so I think that that's what the kids are doing to each other. They're just making joke after joke. And unfortunately, it's going to get more intense as the grade levels move up. But I just wanted to
That's what
make you
turns
aware.
into bullying.
Say again.
That's what turns into bullying.
Yeah, that's what I learned.
Kids say
Yeah.
jokes when you're in kindergarten and preschool and first grade, but then as you continue to do that, your innocent sarcasm gets a little bit harsher and a little bit harsher and a little bit harsher until you're the full blown out bully or verbal abuser. It's verbally abusive to put somebody else's character at the center of a joke. You are
Yeah.
being verbally abusive. It's that simple.
Mhm,
And the other
mhm.
person's laughing about it, now identifying as that. So not only are you causing pain to them emotionally, you're psychologically twisting their self-identity, their value of their worth.
Yeah. Yep.
Like
Mm,
it's so atrocious to me. I just don't have patience for it anymore. And I'm so guilty of doing it when I was a kid because that's what I grew up around.
same.
So like I'm not the pot calling the kettle black.
But it's one of those, it's a
Stainless
bad habit.
can, I'm a stainless steel.
Stainless steel.
Anyways, so minimizing, don't minimize things. Number three, blaming others. We deny responsibility for our behavior and project it out there upon another. The reason my brother is sick in the hospital is because the doctors messed up his medications. We are always looking for something to blame. Pain happens in our life, kind of like the story of Job and his friends. They were always trying to figure out what the cause of that pain is.
Mhm.
Where the healthy, helpful thing to do is to say, God, I'm in pain. Get me through this. I don't want to blame anybody. I don't want to point fingers anywhere. Like, help me learn what I can do to survive and get through this. That is
Mhm.
why having the Lord, a relationship with God is so beneficial. Like, it's not to get everything that you're asking for. It's because he comforts you in those darkest moments and he ultimately has full control over what's going to happen. And
Mhm. And if you give him that chance, you will find that that becomes your preference,
mhm,
versus.
even when it is pain and suffering,
Right.
because the hope and the peace is still there. And I think that's the biggest difference. Like I talk to people, I work with people, Christians and non-Christians, and I do secular counseling and I do Christian counseling. And I'm telling you right now, the clients who have faith are the ones who keep coming back and keep pushing through and keep persevering, and they have the breakthrough in the outcome.
Mhm.
It's a
Mhm.
peace and there's a hope. That doesn't mean despair is not there. It doesn't mean anguish. It doesn't mean depression. They're still feeling all of those things, but there's a light that they know. There's a knowing inside of them that the light is coming. It just really sucks going through the wall right now. And then the clients that I work with who don't have that hope, it's just like, oh, whatever, oh, whatever, oh, whatever, or nothing's going to change, nothing's going to, and they just stay in the cycle and they stay in the cycle and there's no relief and there's no freedom.
Smaller and smaller, I've experienced both, where, but I've been on the end where I'm just like, you know, screw faith. I'm just gonna walk my own walk, and doesn't
Yep.
go well.
Been there, done that myself.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I want nothing to do with that anymore. So,
So, opposition of this, if you're not blaming others, more than likely you're blaming yourself. So,
mhm,
we inwardly take on the fault. It's my fault mom doesn't take care of me and drinks all the time. It's because I'm not worth it.
yeah,
Ouch.
yeah,
Kids that do this. I did it. If I was just better, my dad wouldn't beat us like this. If we were just perfect, if we did this, and if we always knew what to do and what to say and how to say it and how to act and how to be, then we would be loved. And it's not true.
how we become people pleasers, right? Because we think, well, I if I study this person and I predict their mood, then I can prevent things from happening, or I can make it better.
And that's in that everyday narcissism, which that's gonna be the next book that we get into. I think y'all will like that book a lot. I
Mm,
did. Most of my clients freaking love it. They hate it at first, and then they're like, this is my life. And I'm like, it's
mhm,
all of our lives. Like, we're all in this together. Like, nobody is an exception to this rule.
mhm.
All right. So we have denial, minimizing, blaming others, blaming yourself, and then we have rationalizing. We offer excuses, justifications, alibis to provide an inaccurate explanation of what is going on. Did you know that John has a genetic disposition toward rage that runs in his family? That's why the meetings aren't helping him. I think I hear this a lot in the mental health field. It's just genetic. Well, what neuroscience is also discovering is our thoughts change our DNA, and you can change your genetics through,
Yeah.
through the way that you choose to think. So it's not just genetic. Does that play a role? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean it controls you. If you
Yeah.
change what you're thinking and how your body's producing things, you'll break the generational genetic curses that are in your bloodline. You can do that. Does it happen overnight? No, it absolutely does not. But you can, just like I think every parent, you do a little bit better than your parent, that your kids will do a little bit better than you. Their kids are going to do a little bit better than them if you continuously grow and develop that part of them. If growth and development becomes a natural part of their life, they will try to do a little bit better.
Yeah, definitely.
To get stuck in the medication, self-medicating, I'll just numb it away. I'll just do all of these cognitive distortions and rationalize and blame others and stay in that victim mentality, that victim mindset. That's what's going to prevent you from moving forward.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
stop blaming or rationalizing. Stop blaming and rationalizing. I think rationalizing is pretty obvious. Like you can tell when somebody's rationalizing. Well, it's just because of this. Well, it's just because of that. Like when you're like, well, I'm just a clumsy person. Are you? Or are you just not paying attention to what's going on around you because you've learned how to do that in your childhood? And now it's like, oh, well, my mom's just a clumsy person, so I am.
Right.
Really? That's what you want to believe? Like you're just stuck with being clumsy because your mother was? Or do you want to learn to say, what do I need to do to become aware of my surroundings? How do I need to strengthen my ankles and my tendons and whatever, my balance? And it's learning to do it differently, but it's learning. And when we talk about learning these new things and changing your DNA, you're literally creating wrinkles in your brain, new wrinkles. It doesn't happen overnight. I think Dr. Caroline Leaf says it takes 21 days to form a new cognitive pathway.
Mhm.
Your neurotransmitter is dancing along. Every time you put something into practice, it's learning it, it's computing it, and then after 21 days, it connects to another thought. And now you have a new way of thinking. Your brain has a new way of processing. Now, from day 21 to day 64, it's going into your DNA. It's becoming a part of your cellular makeup. It takes time. So
Mhm.
anything you want to develop, get better at, or get rid of, you have to do for a minimum of 64 days, every single day consistently. If you're not doing it consistently for 64 days, it's going to take a lot longer to figure out. But you can do these things, you can make these changes if you stay committed to it and you're consistent with it. Consistency is key.
Mm. And I think the other thing too has been if I pair that with what I'm learning as I do my daily Bible reading and just spending time in the Word, I have had so many things pointed out to me, especially recently, that I'm just, uh, for example, the Bible says with the way that you carry yourself and you get up every day and you get dressed and you look honorable, you're honoring God.
Mhm.
And um, my tendency has been to be a couch potato, but also recognizing that by honoring your body as a temple, that is one way of saying thank you, Lord, for waking me up today. I'm going to appreciate who you made me to be, and that has been something I've been focused on. But also just self-awareness in everything and me realizing how I have just not been paying close attention in general. So I think that has been something where I think at some point along the line, I said, it doesn't really matter, or, I have ADHD, so it's okay. And I accepted that.
Yeah.
And, I come from a family of where that's kind of like, oh, well, I have ADHD. And that's how we brush it off. And me realizing, no, I actually have the skills and abilities to do better. I just have to choose to do it. And the Lord has pointed that out to me too, because there's another verse in the Bible about being lazy. And there's a lot of different ways that one can be lazy. So that's been something that, I know it's going to take me time, but I'm working on it. And so, and it really does, it backs up the psychology of it. So that's how I find the verification and the validation in it. All right, Lord, what do you see? What do you say? And what is it that you want for me to be doing? And it always matches up.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. The next one is intellectualizing. We give analysis, theories, and generalities to avoid personal awareness and difficult feelings. For example, my situation is not that bad compared to how others are suffering in the world. What do I have to cry about?
hmm,
This is also when other people are like, well, at least you don't have it as bad as so and so. They just da 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 da. Like, you can't minimize your pain because somebody else's pain to you is worse off than yours. Like, you're still feeling pain. It's still there. Like, if I have a splinter, I don't go, oh, well, who cares about the pain of my splinter when that guy broke his leg? Like, what?
it hurts. Yeah.
Don't have a freaking paper cut or a splint. Like, that hurts. It hurts. Don't
Yeah.
minimize and don't intellectualize and start analyzing all of the ways that this isn't painful or your feelings aren't valid.
Mhm.
Your feelings are your feelings. They're telling you something. It's a warning signal that's going off. You know,
What's real interesting too is that I stopped watching true crime because it was actually messing me up. But I was in the mindset of before, well, at least my life isn't that bad. I haven't been treated that darkly or that poorly. And then I got hooked on it. And then I realized what it was doing to me. It wasn't making me feel better. It was making me feel worse. And so similar thing, but your pain is your pain. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, what the experience is or, how mild to moderate to severe the trauma is. We're all given the same emotions. And that's where we need to acknowledge each other.
they did a psychology study on true crime, people who watch true crime. And what it resulted in is one, they learned that most women who watch true crime are victims of severe abuse.
I believe,
And they're also on the verge of sociopathology.
I believe that too.
So
And I know a lot of people who are really deep into that genre of podcast or TV show or whatever it is. And I
you're
remember,
desensitizing yourself to death, right?
right. Hmm.
Abuse and well, that's normal. Yep. Everybody does it. It's normal.
And I think, yeah, the familiarity of it is, I mean, that should be a red flag, but because it feels uh, like, oh yeah, I can relate because I went through something like this, but it just becomes more, you fall deeper and deeper into it, just like any addiction. So,
Just like any addiction.
mhm,
Many, many types of addictions, different types of addictions. Another one is distracting. We change the subject or engage in humor to avoid threatening topics. Why are you so focused on the negative? Look at the great time we had as a family last Christmas. I I I heard this all the time. It's like you can't remember anything good that ever happened in your life. Why are you always so focused on all of the bad things? Well, I'm not. I'm just bringing it up because I'm still hurt by it and I want to talk about it, but sorry for bringing up something that's still causing me pain because it makes you uncomfortable to talk about it. That's a big problem.
yeah, definitely. And that's your favorite word, projecting,
Yeah. Why always bring up the past?
because it's unresolved.
Because
And
that's exactly why it's
yeah,
unresolved.
because I value my relationship with you and I want to make it right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's sometimes we have to say those things, and that other party may not be willing to say it, or maybe they haven't realized it yet, but putting it out there is important, you know.
And the thing I want to touch on, or just to reiterate, is it's not this or that.
Hmm.
A lot of time, like even when I was like in our group and we're talking about like the painful experiences we went through, there was one of the ladies said, I just had to really learn to remember that I can only do better than my mom. My kids are going to do better than me. They're going to do, and I'm like, Well, here you are just minimizing and rationalizing the pain of what somebody is sharing right now. And it's so subtle. Like you don't even realize you're doing it half the time because you think you're offering something that's helpful, but in the process, you just minimize the pain that somebody else is sharing. Like that's awful. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Yeah.
It's empathizing with the emotion first. Then it's offering something on top of that. It's both things. We have to do both.
Right. And I think that's been the the biggest thing for, and I know that there are two different mindsets. You know, there's some people who think they rationalize and they logically categorize everything. And then there are the people who are, just I just really need you to know, this is how I'm feeling. And they're just talking to whoever it is. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the offender. It's just I need to share with somebody who understands this emotion or what this feels like.
Yeah.
And I need to get it out so that I can then move on to the what do I do about it part. Um, and
I
I
think
that's
that's
healing, and God gives us those emotions for a reason.
And one of the things to maybe mention is, again, talking about what validation is. We're not talking about validating in terms of like statistics where it has to be true and what's the other? It's validation and reliability.
Oh yeah.
When you're validating somebody, all you're doing is reflecting back that how they feel is how they feel. You're not agreeing with that feeling. You're not disagreeing with that feeling. You're just saying it sounds like you feel really frustrated by this.
Hmm.
That is validating.
Yeah.
I am like, I do feel frustrated by this. Okay, well, what can we do about it? Now you can go into the helpful part of it.
Hmm.
You cannot help somebody in their situation if you cannot validate the emotional experience they're going through first.
Yeah.
Just can't. And this is God because that's how our fight or flight works. That is how our brain is designed. It has to meet the emotional need first before it can go into the logical side of it.
Hmm.
Or you're fooling yourself and you're pretending like you don't have emotions and you're dismissing that part of you to intellectualize and just rationalize everything.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy. It's
Yeah.
also equally not healthy to only make decisions based upon how you're feeling and to victimize yourself to your feelings.
Yeah.
You have to do both. Like this is an and, not an if or. It's an and then. This and that. So looking at it from both the emotion and then the logical. But you got to deal with the feelings first. Otherwise, your feelings hijack your brain, turns on your fight or flight. When your fight or flight kicks in, guess what? Your prefrontal cortex turns off. That is where all of your decisions are made. That is where all of your processing is happening. That is intellectual thinking is gone. So somebody who's emotional that you're trying to intellectually conversate with, that part of their brain isn't even on. So what are you doing? You're wasting your breath. It's not
Hmm.
helpful.
And making them more frustrated.
Turn that off. Try to identify the feeling. If you can identify the feeling, that should tell you something about yourself. You're not in tune with your own emotions. We can look at somebody and tell, for the most part, one of the seven emotions that they're feeling. You can see it on their face, you can see it in their body language. If that's all you can say, like, hey, you look really upset. Is everything
Hmm.
okay? Do you want to talk about it?
Hmm.
That's more than you need to stop doing this. And why are you so upset about that? You need to da da da. Like,
Or what do you need? Like, how can I help?
doesn't help. So distracting. Um, and the last one's becoming hostile. We get angry or irritable when reference is made to certain subjects. Like, don't talk about Joe. He's dead. It's not going to bring him back. This is in the grief process. Anger is one of the five stages of grief. So, but becoming hostile is different than expressing anger.
Hmm.
Hostility is embedding on the rights of others.
And it can escalate. It can be dangerous.
So the Gottmans talk about criticism as one of the four horsemen that destroys relationships.
Mm.
Hostility, criticism is a part of hostility. Defensiveness can cause hostile environments.
Mhm.
Usually defensive people become defensive to perceived criticism.
Yep.
So
Yep.
again, it all comes down to perception. What did you mean by that? Because sometimes we hear something not in the way that the person's saying it, but because of our own experiences, and that's kind of clouding our judgment. And so, boom, I mean, instantaneously every offense comes to mind that reminds you of what just happened. And so you're reacting to all of that instead of being present and staying in the moment. And when
Yeah.
you notice that you're doing that with somebody repetitively, you got some wounds that you need to heal, that you need to work through.
Mhm.
So those are
Yep.
those are the ones that they talk about in this book. The cognitive well, the painful ways of thinking,
Okay.
defenses. What were we gonna say?
I said, I think that that was one of my biggest and hardest lessons to learn in marriage, because not allowing myself to see my husband as my former abusers, and him saying to me, I'm not your bio dad. I'm not, whoever it is that you're thinking of. And that was one of those, it kind of shattered the glass moments, because I still have to catch myself to this day, just trying to be empathetic, understanding. I mean, sure, in marriages and in relationships, we still have times where we misunderstand each other, and I might get frustrated or whatever, and I have to let that go. But then I'll seek the actual intention, and have that conversation. We had to learn how to talk to each other,
That's the
and
key. Because I'll tell you right now, I've heard from numerous boyfriends that I've had in the past who were abusive that would say the same thing. I'm not your ex. I'm not your dad. Well, guess what? You're acting and behaving just like them.
mhm,
You're using harsh words with me. You're raising your voice and screaming at me. You're blaming me for what you just did. So, yeah, you might not be my ex, but you might be acting like them, and you need to take that into consideration too. So, it's not just saying, I'm not your ex. Now, if I'm approaching it from a compassionate place and I'm validating the feeling and the fear that you're having, and then I'm saying, hey, I'm not going to treat you the same way that people in your past have treated you. And I'm
mm,
showing you through my language, through my interaction, through my body language, my tone of voice, my words. I'm showing you that right now.
mhm,
That's different.
mhm,
But when you just, I'm not your ex and I'm not this and I'm so sick of you comparing me to everything in your past. Well, sometimes they are being just like the person from your past. They are actually behaving and interacting that way.
right,
So how you resolve conflict is going to either reestablish safety and security, or it's going to continue to break it down.
mhm,
The more defensive and controlling and manipulative you become with it, that is what manipulation is taking your past and using it as a way to benefit me.
yep,
I can continue to mistreat you and then say, well, I'm not your past. You need to let that go.
mhm,
So
mm.
there's, it's not.
Yeah, it's a pendulum, and we've been in both places
Mhm.
where he's been reassuring and comforting, saying, "No, I'm not that person." But when we're in times of stress for whatever is happening outside our relationship and we bring that home, then I'll say, now you're acting like that person, and that's where, but he also, didn't grow up around, not an excuse, but he didn't grow up around what I grew up around. And for me to have to point out, okay, so when these things would happen when I was a child, these are the behaviors that I would experience, or the actions and things like that. And that's why I'm saying that, and that I can't be in an environment like that. So, and that's why communication is so pivotal. And I think I'm going to be learning that for the rest of my life, because especially with two people trying to have a healthy marriage, that's something we're always working on. There's always something, but communication is the big one.
Love it. And if you want to read a good book, read Fight Right by the Gottmans. All right, so we talked about all the problems. Let's talk about the path to new beginnings, because this is the healing part of it. So he starts out with saying, Job models brilliantly for us how we are to grieve in the family of Jesus, regardless of our family, temperament, culture, or gender. He models for us 5 different phases of biblical grieving, so central to our following of Jesus. It is a new radical way for most of us. Number 1 is paying attention. Pay attention to what's going on in your body. Pay attention to what's going on in your mind. Pay attention to what's going on around you. This is awareness, building self-awareness, being aware of how you're impacting the world and awareness of how the world is impacting you.
Mhm.
How the outside comes in and how the inside comes out. It's both. It's not just I'm self-aware about what bothers me, so you can't do like no. You have to be aware of how you impact those around you and how those around you are impacting you. So he shouted at God. He prayed wild prayers. He told God exactly what he was feeling. For 35 chapters, we read how he struggled with God. This is Job. He doubted him. He wept. He wondered where God was and why all of this had happened to him. He did not avoid the horror of his predicament, but confronted it directly. I
Yeah.
love.
Mhm. Mhm.
We are uncomfortable with such rare, confusing bluntness. When I
Mhm.
became a Christian, I was taught that anger was a sin. Wanting to be like Jesus, I stuffed all feelings of irritation, annoyance, resentment, and hatred. They were sins, right? Yes and no. And
Mhm.
when we
Mhm.
do not process before God the very feelings that make us human, such as fear or sadness or anger, we leak. Our churches are filled with leaking Christians who have not treated their emotions as a discipleship issue. Grieving is not possible without paying attention to our anger and our sadness. Most people who fill churches are nice and respectable. Few explode in anger, at least in public. The majority, like me, stuff these difficult feelings, trusting that God will honor our noble efforts. The result is that we leak through in soft ways, such as passive aggressive behavior, like showing up late, sarcastic remarks, a nasty tone of voice, and the giving of the silent treatment. So, those are all ineffective ways of dealing with your emotions. But for some reason, because it doesn't make anybody else uncomfortable, we accept it. And it's not okay. Like, we have to be willing to have the difficult, conflict, uncomfortable argument in order to make peace.
Yeah. Isn't that your expression of be comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Comfortably uncomfortable is such a popular thing now. I love it. So,
Mhm.
Job's misery lasted for several months, perhaps even years. We do not know. What we do know is that he paid attention to both God and himself, choosing to enter the confusion of his personal dark night of the soul rather than to medicate himself. We enjoy the fruits of his decisions to this day. So, medication numbs you. This is why people use drugs and alcohol. So, even if it's prescription medication, it's still numbing you. And it can be beneficial temporarily, but it is not the solution. That medication is not making your brain better. It's turning parts of it off so you just don't feel it anymore. You have to feel your feelings. You have to go through this if you want to overcome it. So don't give up on it and don't get stuck in the medication side of it. I know I did for a long time,
Mhm.
but
I think there's also other, we were talking about the different types of addictions, but I think I've mentioned before, running became my way of processing because I would get that dopamine boost when I was done. And suddenly I was fine for the rest of the day. But that's literally running from my problems. But there are so many.
I mean, you got shopping, eating. What do you do with your feelings? What is the thing that you instinctively go to when you're having a really bad day? That is your vice.
Mhm.
That is what you are using to replace God and what He can do to actually heal you. And you're using that as a way to just, at least this is better for me.
Mhm.
And running isn't bad, right? Like, that's not a bad thing to do. Running is healthy, it keeps you strong, it's exercise. But when you're doing anything for the reason of stuffing and getting rid of your feelings, you're not doing it for the right reasons. That is going to become a crutch.
It can also become, yeah, it can be bad. Anything in over moderation. Like I destroyed my knees. I had a cortisol problem because I was exercising so long and so hard. My
What happens
body,
if you didn't have it anymore?
I crashed. I was miserable, miserable. And that's where God pointed that out to me. I was forced to lay on a sofa and heal one knee at a time. And I had to turn my eyes back to him. There was nothing else that I could find to satisfy my soul
Mhm.
because I couldn't run. And it was frustrating. And I remember eventually just, I know I had gotten out of the habit of being mindful and prayerful and consistent with that routine. But me lamenting, I'm so frustrated by the fact that I can't run, Lord. I'm so frustrated. I'm so frustrated. And that just turning into conversations about, well, here's the reasons why you shouldn't actually, because it's doing more harm than good. And I need you here. And I want your attention. I don't want running to be your religion. So,
I'm going to correct that. God would never tell us what we should and shouldn't do. He doesn't
okay,
show
true,
us.
true. Right, right.
This is what you need to be aware of.
Yeah.
It's the truth of the situation.
Yeah.
Is that in fact helping you, or are you using that? This is when we use God to run from God.
Okay. Yep, yep, yep.
Some of those in the very beginning when you talked about all the ways that we dismiss our emotions.
Mhm.
God's not telling you, oh, you should stay there. You should like shoulding is a shaming. When we should on people, we shame them. God doesn't shame us.
Mhm.
It's, hey, I need you to take a break right now and shift your focus. Let's
Agreed.
think about what's important. This isn't the end of the world, but you need to understand that this isn't the answer to your everything either.
Mhm. And it was a gentle voice. It was one of those, when you seek him and you're asking those questions, what you get back is it's not a harsh tone. It's not something that, you know, he's shaking a finger in your face. It's, well, gently put, you're you're hurting yourself, or these actions. Yeah, technically I could continue to run now and I might do a couple runs, but I'm not like I was.
I have to do it. I have to do it. If I don't do it, I'm not going to survive. I got to do it. I have to do it. It's
Yeah.
that have to versus choose to.
Mhm. And I
So
know there's other options, and I think actually I've gotten to the point now where it I mean, it's being over 40, but my muscles get so tense and sore and my spine and everything just hurts the next day. And I'm like, is this worth it? Whereas I could just be doing yoga or going for a walk or something that's gentler on my body. I get what?
riding a bike.
Riding a bike. Yeah, actually talked to Phil about that this morning. And I know that that's just it's for me, it's also that familiarity thing because I don't know anything about those things, but being willing to start something new and
It's
trying.
being a like your body, everything changes throughout the course of life.
Mhm.
Always changing. Nothing stays the same. And so teaching yourself how to be adaptable is what helps you survive the changes that are going to happen no matter what. You're not going to stop it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So the first one is paying attention, becoming aware of your awareness. Number two, waiting in the confusing in between. This is maybe the biggest struggle I think we all face is this confusing in between stage. Like, what do I do? Where do I go? Do I go this way? That like, can we just make it happen? Can we just get it over with? I don't want to wait anymore. I don't like this. It's so uncomfortable.
It's so hard to sit still, especially for me. I'm always like, I know I want to go. I want to do the thing. What is the thing?
Yeah, like we have a trip coming up in October that we've been planning for months already.
Yeah. And every time that we book another train, I'm like, can we just leave?
I'll live there forever.
Yeah, yeah.
So wait in the confusing in between. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Psalm 37:7. So this remains one of the most radical commands of our day. It requires enormous humility. I can't sit still. I can't do that. I can't this. I can't that. I can't take 2 minutes to breathe. I don't have time for this. Uh, you poop for longer than 2 minutes.
Hmm.
Don't tell me you don't have 2 minutes to choose to sit down and be still.
Right.
You you just haven't practiced it. That's all it comes down to is being intentional in your practice.
Hmm. Hmm.
You
Think
know,
about how many videos you watch in a row.
and it's just it's to me I hear it a lot just from parents and I get it. Like kids are constantly demanding your attention. But what do you do when you have to go poop? You just
Yeah.
don't poop because you can't, because your kid needs you for those 2 to 5 minutes that you're going to be in there pooping. Like
Yep.
that, no. If you go poop while you have kids, you have 2 to 5 minutes to sit down and give yourself a break. Like that
Yep.
just, it's that simple. Like,
And they have to learn also that the world doesn't revolve around them. You know, that's part of your early childhood speaker here is just that they have their own limits and they those limits come from you. And a similar situation, I know I have several runner friends and with children, and they tell them, when their kids are whining and crying, I don't want you to go running, or I want to come with you. And they say, this is my way of taking care of myself so that I can take care of you later. And like mom needs this time. And similarly, that's my Bible time in the morning. That's me taking care of myself so that I can be a seed to others throughout the day and that I'm not dumping my crap on everybody else. But that's yeah, it's an important thing to do, but it's a priority.
I love that he says the problem with Job is that it wasn't true. All of the things that the friends were saying.
Mm-hmm.
He was an innocent sufferer. His friends had no room for the confusing in between, no room for mystery. Like many Christians today, they overestimated their grasp of truth. They played God and stood in God's shoes. Job had two fights going on, one with God and the other with his friends who kept quoting scripture to him. They tried to fix Job and defend God, and in their attempt to explain what God was doing, which they did not understand, they tortured Job, who was already in great pain. Do you know what it is like to feel worse after talking with people who are trying to make you feel better? This is probably the hardest thing for me and what I'm working through right now in my relationship with my mother.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I have felt from her my whole life. I don't think she does it intentionally to be, I don't think Job's friends were doing it to be harmful. But when I'm crying out in pain and she's trying to fix my problem, it just makes me feel worse.
Yeah.
Something is wrong with me for feeling this way and coming to you to share it with you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
People need to connect in our painful places.
Yep. Yep. And it can be as simple as saying, I see you, and I'm sorry if I did something to hurt you, but I'm sorry I hurt you. I love you and I'm here for you. But starting small and just acknowledging, yeah, like your pain is real and I see it. It goes a long way.
Number three, embrace the gift of limits.
Hmm.
Embrace your boundaries.
Hmm.
I can't do everything. I can't be everything to everybody. I can't make everybody happy.
Hmm.
Embrace your limits. Like we have limits for a reason. They protect us. They prevent us from burning out, is what they do.
Yeah.
So your physical body has limits, your family of origin has limits, your marital status, your intellectual capacity has limits, your talents and your gifts, your material wealth, your raw material, your time, your work and relationship realities, your spiritual understanding. All of it has limits. You are
Hmm.
not everything to everybody. You are not God. You are not all powerful and all knowing. And the people that you try to fix are the people that you can learn from.
Yeah. Amen.
So, John the Baptist models wonderfully for us what it means to embrace our limits. Crowds that formerly followed John for baptism switched their allegiances once Jesus began his ministry. They began leaving John to follow Jesus. Some of John's followers were upset about this dramatic turn of events. They complained to him, everyone is going to him. John understood limits and replied, a person can receive only what is given them from heaven. He was able to say, I accept my limits, my humanity, my declining popularity. He must increase, I must decrease.
Mhm.
Growing up will require learning. He is not the center of the universe. The universe does not exist to meet his every need. That's a baby. We grow up
Mhm.
happy babies.
Yeah.
This is what you were just talking about. Children have to understand that the world does not revolve around them.
Yeah.
First 18 months, the world revolves around them. They are completely 100% dependent.
Mhm.
Then
Mhm.
they learn how to build autonomy. You have to separate so they can learn how to become their own self, their own person.
Yep.
We are still connected, we are still supportive, but we are not responsible for. You have to learn how to take care of yourself. You need to learn how to regulate and deal with disappointments and the sadness. But I'm here to teach you and explain these things to you and feel these feelings with you and go through this with you.
Mhm. One of my favorite methods, especially when my niece and nephew were going through that, and we were celebrating the fact that yes, okay, now we have personalities that are like, no, I don't want to do this, or no, I don't want to do that. But my niece she's always been very attentive to detail and very much wants to march to the beat of her own drum, which is beautiful within limits. But some things I've had to say to her when she's really adamant on something is I'll give her a choice and I'll say, for example, she's standing on top of a table. I'll say, this is dangerous and you can either hold my hand and I'll help you down, or you can get down by yourself. What do you choose? Well, I don't want to get down. That's not one of your options. And giving those limits where it's not like we're not being disrespectful by telling them,
No,
that by telling them no. Yeah. And but we're saying that I'm doing this because I don't want to see you get hurt. And
that's a teaching too. That's a discipline.
mhm,
A parent that just is like, get off the table, get off the table. You're
right.
not teaching them why. You're
Yeah.
not teaching them how to make safe decisions and choices.
Right.
Teaching them how to
Yeah.
be afraid and rebellious because screw you, you're gonna yell at me like that. I'll get on the table whenever I want. So when you're not around, guess what that kid's doing? Dancing on that table.
Yep. Yep. The whole time. It makes me laugh too because I know she's always looking for the the more powerful way out, and I remember specifically me giving her those two options and her being like, because she wanted to come up with her own options, I'll get down by myself. Okay, we're going to move forward.
Saying, hey, let's try both options. Let's see what it's like for me to help you get down, and then you see what it's like to get down by yourself.
Yep. Yep. That's also a good way to do it.
And then
And
they're seeing it two different ways. Get back on the table. Let's try it with my help this time.
yep.
Did you
Yep.
like it this way? What if we did it this way? Jump on my back. Now you're making it play. You know what I mean? Like it's helping them experience something positive with that negative emotion.
Right. Right. And that's been, and it's also I try to point out to her there's some situations too where your decisions are going to impact what comes next. So we were in Disney World of all places, and I know that place can be very overstimulating to a toddler. And she was having a bit of a fit. She didn't want to go in somewhere, and I stood outside with her and I said, That's okay." Yeah, I said, "But if we don't go in, we're not going to see this show. So we can stay out here and wait for the whole family, or we can, and you can calm down. That's fine. Or if you want to do X, Y, or Z, then we got to go to this first because it's part of that." And you could see the little wheels turning in her head. Okay, I'm okay. Let's go in. I think that's been the biggest thing. And it,
That builds
honestly,
courage. Like you made her brave by making her own decision. You made her stronger. You didn't
right.
force her to do something.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, and that's why kids get so frustrated. That's why adults get so frustrated because if we aren't allowed if we don't have someone who meets us in that moment and says, "Yeah, it's okay to be upset and you can work through it and like I'm here for you, but then also, we're going to resolve this, and here are the healthy ways to do that." Then that's why we have so many kids when they don't get that, they turn into those adults too that also have such a hard time like figuring out what to do. But I think that has been one of my goals as their aunt is to just be somebody who, because I definitely am not, I'm not saying that I'm good at that either, but from what I learned as my undergrad courses and being able to meet them within their limits and just saying, I'm not trying to control you, I'm just trying to give you options and help you think through them.
And it's okay to have limits.
Hmm.
So,
Oops, I froze.
I know you're back.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a painful lesson for all of us to learn. Our egos tend to be so inflated that we act as if we are God. Getting
Mm.
off our thrones and joining the rest of humanity is a must for growing up. A part of us hates limits. We won't accept them. This is part of the reason why grieving loss biblically is such an indispensable part of spiritual maturity. It humbles us like nothing else. So, embrace your gifts, embrace your limits. Number 4, climb the ladder of humility. This was a long, harsh lesson for me to learn. Right?
Hmm.
My arrogant, broken child who didn't want to have any limits whatsoever. I will do anything and be everything and take on the world, which is great because it pushes. I'm a very ambitious person because of
Mhm.
it, but you can't do everything by yourself. And if you can't ask for help, you're going to be stuck in the place that you are because it's other people and their strengths and what they're good at that
Yeah,
helps you become the most successful I think that you can. So
definitely.
climb the ladder of humility. Job emerged from his suffering transformed. He was a broken and changed man. Instead of getting mad at his friends and cussing them out, so to speak, or seeking revenge, he prayed and he blessed them. Throughout the
Mm.
process of waiting, Job made a choice. It was a choice to climb the ladder of humility, something Jesus described as an indispensable quality for maturing in him. So, the steps of the humility ladder. Step 1, fear God and mindfulness of him. We often forget the presence of God, acting as if he were not present. He's always present. He's
Yeah,
all
it's
the
always
time.
good.
So become mindful of that. I always think about like when I would be in arguments with my ex-husband, if I if I called the police like I've had to,
Mhm.
he would talk to me completely differently.
Yeah.
And I used to say that if our pastor was sitting here right now, how would you be talking to me? And then
Yeah.
it's, oh, so you can do it, but I can't, and all of that. Like it's just think about that. If Jesus were in this room with us right now, how do you think he'd feel?
Yeah.
How do you think you would change the way you were speaking to me? Because I used to say to them, like, I've never heard you talk to your boss this way.
Mhm.
Heard you talk to the pastor this way. I've never heard you talk to the neighbors this way.
Yeah.
Why do you talk to me like this? Why am I the target of that?
Mhm.
Fear God and be mindful of him. Step 2, do God's will, not your own or other people's. We recognize that surrendering our self will to God's will for our lives touches the very heart of spiritual transformation. This is so profound. I remember the day that I prayed that where I was like, God, I really suck at making my own decisions. My life is in turmoil. Like, I give back my free. I was like, I surrender my free will. I give it back to you. Just anything you tell me to do, I'll do. Lead me and I will go. I will follow. And that is what developed my ability to be a leader. You
Mm.
have to follow first. You have to know what it feels like to be the follower. Otherwise, what are you leading? Who are
Yeah.
you? And where are you leading people to? Do you even know? Or are you just trying to be a boss and get your ego fed?
Right.
So surrender your will, do God's will. And then you step up to be willing to subject yourselves to the direction of others. We are free to give up our arrogance and all powerfulness and are open to accepting God's will as it comes through others. This may be a manager at work or directions from a friend. And we do it without grumbling or an attitude. It's learning to
Mm.
say, I disagree with what you're saying, but okay, I hear that. I'll work on it. How would you have
Mhm.
me do that? It's a
Mhm.
hard lesson, hard pill to swallow, especially when you're being mistreated.
Right. I think there's always something. I remember hearing this from one of my friends saying, like, when someone's saying something to me about something I said or did, and I'm trying to weigh the truth of it, that's where I instantly go is, okay, what truth can I find in this? And does that sound like me? Does that sound like something I would do or I did do? And like Lord pointed out to me, if I need to humble myself, then please let me humble myself. But by not getting defensive and not attacking that person for pointing it out to you, like you can learn something from it. You can also come back and say, I don't think you're right. I don't think that was me, but I would like to get to the bottom of it, and I'm really sorry you're upset, but Or maybe you were like, you know what, I owe you an apology. So
Yeah.
um, I think that's an important, that's part of that turning inward too, and just being humble and being able to check yourself.
So a simple way of knowing that you need to do this, if you feel this like lump in your throat, this like something feels like it's lodged in your chest,
Hmm.
that's your pride that you need to swallow. Because what's trying to come out of you is control and manipulation.
Yeah.
When you know, like if you're in a situation where you're just like, I just got this tightness in my chest, that's your arrogance and your ego. Your pride is
Yeah.
a warning sign, like your chest is literally like pride is taking over.
Hmm.
Swallow this. Say you're sorry. Cry. Let the emotion out. It's okay that you disappointed somebody. That doesn't make you a disappointment.
Amen.
People can be hurt by your actions just as much as you can be hurt by other people's actions.
Yeah.
Okay. That is okay. You're going to be okay. So
Hmm.
be patient to accept the different difficulties of others. So fear God and be mindful of him, do his will, have a willingness to subject ourselves to the direction of others. And then you're going to work into step 4, patient to accept the difficulties of others. Life with others, especially when living in community, is full of aggravations. This requires we give others a chance to figure out their weakness in their own way, in their own time. That's hard, especially in marriage, relationships.
Hmm. Hmm.
Let me tell you why you're a problem. Let me tell you all the things that are wrong with you. Can you let that go? Can you let somebody figure out life and learn in their own timing and trust that God's going to guide them? That doesn't mean you take abuse. That doesn't mean that you subject yourself to somebody tearing you down. Because sometimes you got to get away. You have to be safe. Um, but before you do that, try just getting out of your own way.
Hmm.
Leave it in God's hands. He's in your hands. I leave him to you. I leave this person to you. I give this person to you. I give this person to you. Over time, they'll show you who they are and whether God's working through them or if they're just resisting to God. Because God will always intervene for you when you ask him to, but he will not do it at the expense of another's free will. So that will tell you where that person's at in their standing with the Lord. That's
Amen. Yeah.
step 5, radical honesty to others about our weaknesses and our faults. This is where transparency is developed. This isn't about being honest when somebody catches you. It's what children do. They lie until they get caught, and then they're like, oh.
Hmm.
Narcissists will never, no matter how much evidence you present, they will never admit that they were wrong. That's the difference between a liar and a narcissist. So when we quit pretending to be something we're not, we are becoming transparent. We admit our weaknesses and limitations to a friend, a spouse, a parent, or someone else who cares about our development. So be honest about your faults and your weaknesses. I messed up. I did this bad thing. I'm suffering. I'm struggling here. I need to open up and tell somebody.
Hmm.
He's trustworthy.
Hmm.
Number 6, step 6, deeply become aware of being chief of all sinners. We see ourselves as potentially weaker and more sinful than anyone around us. We are the chief of all sinners. This is not self hate or an invitation to abuse, but it is meant to make us kind and gentle. I recognize that I mess up just as much as the next person, so I'm going to respond in a kind and a gentle way.
Hmm.
You will not be able to do that until you become very transparently aware of yourself. So go deep within you, figure out who you are, identify this person that God created you to be, and with if you're operating in your false self or if you're growing and working into your true self.
Hmm.
This will lead you into step 7, which is purposeful to speak less with more restraint. This is near the top of the ladder because it is seen as the outcome of life that seeks God and is filled with wisdom. As the rule of Saint Benedict states, the wise are known for their few words. Do you listen? Do you absorb? Do you sit and be still at the foot of Jesus like Mary? Help me understand that. Tell me more about that.
Mhm.
What did that
That's
mean? How did that
the
feel?
biggest challenge, I think, is my
That's
mind.
why it's at the top of the ladder, speaking less.
Mhm.
If you want to challenge yourself to do this, join a group, any group. I don't care what kind of support group it is. It can be a book club, it can be a Bible study. Let everybody else speak. Challenge yourself. People with ADHD symptom tendencies, this is real hard for us.
Yep. Might be the most challenging thing I face on the daily. So,
I practiced doing this years ago, back in 2015, before I started my master's program. And I had a mentor who led a group that I was going to. He's a professional counselor, but it was like a Bible study. And I remember I came in after a few weeks. I'm the person who talks a lot in the beginning because I'm nervous and I'm, but then once I get comfortable, I'm like, and he said to me, he was like, your whole demeanor has changed in the past couple of weeks. And I'm like, yeah, I'm getting more comfortable. So it's interesting because people say that, like, oh, you're really talkative. And I'm like, yeah, when I'm really nervous and anxious, I get real talkative for whatever reason. But once I'm like, you know what? I want to listen. I'm gonna let everybody else speak. Even in our group last night, or Thursday, the lady said, anybody want to share? And I said, I have learned that I don't share first. I have to and I said, and I'll wait at least probably like 10 seconds. That if nobody shares, I'm like, well, I'll share if everybody else is uncomfortable with it. But I had to train myself to be like, let somebody else share first.
mhm.
If you're the last one to share, you're the last one to share. And if there's no time for you to share, then this wasn't meant for you. I had
Mhm.
to defeat that impulsivity, that intrusiveness that was coming out. Because when you grow up in a household with all women, guess who's all talking all at the same time?
Everybody. Yep.
It's
See,
like
I'm
growing up
actually,
for men, like all boys, they eat super fast. Because if you don't, you don't eat, right? No
yep.
matter like with talking. If I don't chime in, nobody's gonna give me room to talk ever. So
Yep.
I've had to learn to say, if I don't have room to talk, then I don't have room to talk. And this will be the day that I listen.
Yep. I think I'm actually the opposite. When I'm around new people, I'm a lot more quiet. Then you get to know me and I don't stop. I have lots to say, but
I think that's the introvert extrovert kind of thing too. The
mhm.
extrovert's like, oh, and the introvert's like, it's fine. But then once you get comfortable, the extrovert's like, and then the introvert's like, thank you. No, it, it's an exchange. It's a
Mhm.
dance. We all are dancing. And sometimes it takes the extrovert being willing to, to share and to say all of these things that gives the introvert the courage to then do it later.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely it. And I think I like to take an inventory almost of, who I'm around and just to get to know people. That's how I get to know people is through observation and listening and trying to find a jumping off point where I can relate. And then once I have it, I'm like, boom, let's go. But uh, yeah, and that's definitely even with as a college professor, that's still the thing. Like you would think that I could walk in there and just be like, okay, let's do it. But I'm always nervous on day one. And I read something somewhere that said if you are a teacher and the night before school you're not nervous anymore, it's time to find a new career because
What are
so
they going to think of me?
right, yeah, and it's just new faces and new experiences, but they're I what's funny about it is that we're all feeling pretty much the same thing, just we're expressing it in different ways once we get in there.
And so that leads to step 8, which is the transformation into love of God. When we are transformed into the love of God. So here there is no haughtiness, no sarcasm, no put downs, no airs of importance. We're able to embrace our limits and those of others. We are fully aware of how fragile we are and are under no illusions. We are at home with ourselves and content to rely on the mercy of God. Everything is a gift. And
to
I
go.
think this takes just like a lot of, I mean, this is years. This ladder is like you're going over the course of years to develop and grow into each of these, to take that next step, to take that next step. So,
I guess it's why it makes so much sense when you see people in their golden years and they're just so chill about everything. And they're like, oh well. Yeah.
whatever.
Like,
I don't, it shows a picture of like a ladder.
mhm,
I think an accurate depiction is like a step that has like a very long plateau. And then you get up to the next step and it's got another very, very long plateau. And you're working your way up, not directly straight up, but like up and out and up and out. And those are kind of like those horizons. The
mhm,
next season is that next step, the next season. So, where are you at on this ladder, on these steps of humility? And how can you work towards the next step if you know that if the first place I need to be is like figuring out how to have a fear of God and be mindful of Him, then that's where you're at.
mhm,
Embrace that. Like at least you're taking that first step.
mhm, mhm,
So let the old birth the new. Good grieving is not just letting go, but also letting it bless us. Pay attention, wait in the confusing in between, embrace the gift of your limits, climb the ladder of humility, let the old birth the new in God's timing. We will be blessed. That is the lesson of Job. As he followed the difficult path of allowing his losses to enlarge his soul for God, God blessed him superabundantly. Not only was he spiritually transformed, but the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. The Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former part. His wealth was doubled. God gave him 10 children once again, and he lived till a ripe old age. This account is meant to encourage us to trust the living God with the many, many deaths that we experience in our lives. The central message of Christ is that suffering and death bring resurrection and transformation. Jesus himself said, very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. But remember, resurrection only comes out of death, real death. Our losses are real, and so is our God, the living God.
it really hits home.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
So I'm going to read our prayer and we can close out. We can make any announcements that we need to. So,
Okay.
Lord Jesus, when I think about my losses, it can feel that I have no skin to protect me. I feel raw, scraped to the bone. I don't know why you have allowed such pain. Looking at Job helps, but I must admit that I struggle to see something new being birthed out of the old. Lord, grant me the courage to feel, to pay attention, and then to wait on you. You know that everything in me resists limits, humility, and the cross. So I invite you, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, to make your home in me as you describe in John 14:23, to freely roam and fill every crevice of my life. And may the prayer of Job finally be mine. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Open my eyes to a cat.
That's a
Boom.
beautiful.
I might have to cut that because Mulder's butt was in the camera the entire time that you were praying. So,
I don't think that matters. I would not cut the prayer out because of the butt in the camera.
yeah, that's true. Our eyes
Um,
should be shut during that, anyways.
huh?
Our eyes need to be closed during that, anyways. That's your challenge.
So I disagree. I think that's something that the religious people declare. I don't think our eyes have to be closed for prayer. I think we can.
However, it comes to us.
When I close my eyes during prayer, I'm thinking and hearing and everything except for prayer. My eyes are open, I focus, and I can hear. And it's just, so it's different for everybody. Like,
I could see that. It's like our learning modalities,
yeah.
the way different ways of taking in things or releasing them.
All right, cool. So next week we are going to be discussing the next chapter, which is discovering the rhythms of the daily office and Sabbath. I think this is like making time to be intentional in your quiet time.
Mhm.
So that'll be fun to embrace and enjoy and get to
Yep.
know.
I'll be coming back with hopefully with a little bit of a tan. And so, and then
Or
do we,
expired sunblock like we did in Jamaica.
gosh, make sure it's not expired. So, yeah, I'll be doing some paddle boarding there. Um, so
Everybody, real quick. Do you have an announcement to make?
I was gonna mention the retreat. We're still accepting reservations, and that's an all women's retreat. So we still have room if you want to join us. It'll be August 2nd to the 9th in Holden Beach.
Golden Beach, North Carolina. If you've never been on a women's retreat, or maybe you just really need a vacation because it's been a while, just come. It'll be fun. We're gonna plan it. There's gonna be a lot of free time. I'll be working for some of it as well. So
You can hang out with me.
yeah, get to know each other. Find women that are like-minded and been through some stuff and are looking to build relationships and fellowship. So I look forward to it. If it's just the two of us, I'll still have a great time. So,
Yep. Same, same.
all right, everybody, have a great weekend. Have a great week. Stay focused on the Lord. Give yourself 2 to 5 minutes every day to just be still, to breathe. And we will see you next Saturday.